Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for the webinar, County Levers to Drive Economic Mobility, How Counties Are Increasing the Prosperity of Their Residents. My name is Katie Sullivan, and I am a program manager on the Resilient Economies and Communities team here at the National Association of Counties. And it is my great pleasure to be your moderator for the day. Our overall objective today is to examine the tools that counties can use to drive economic mobility or movement up the economic ladder over a lifetime. Here is our excellent lineup of speakers today. First, we will hear from Stacey Machinto, NACo Research and Data Analyst, and Kevin Trotter, NACo Associate Economist, on a recent report and research focused on county levers and authorities to drive economic mobility. Second, we will hear from two county speakers sharing how they bring this work to life on the ground. Commissioner Kevin Boyce of Franklin County, Ohio, will share about the county's innovative education and workforce training program called Building Futures. Then we will hear from Supervisor Larry Nelson from Waukesha County, Wisconsin, on the region's multi-county housing consortium called HOME. And finally, we will conclude with a Q&A portion. Before we dive in, just a few housekeeping items. First, you will notice there is a Q&A and chat function in Zoom. We will be using the Q&A to capture questions for our Q&A section at the end of the webinar. Please enter any questions you may have for any of our presenters into that box, and we will try to get to them at the end. You may also use the chat box at any time to send us a message if you are experiencing technical difficulties. Finally, for your information, today's webinar will be recorded and will be posted on the NACo website at www.naco.org/webinars for future viewing and reference. Now, before I turn things over to our excellent speakers, I'm going to take a moment to share with you briefly about the program related to economic mobility that NACo offers. The Economic Mobility Leadership Network, or EMLN, is a cohort of county elected officials that examines the range of complicated issues that comprise economic mobility, so improving economic outcomes for county residents, especially with the goal of producing outcomes that are better in one generation than the previous one. The EMLN program is structured around a model of in-person convenings in which members participate in interactive, on-site, and multi-day convenings in diverse counties across the country, with the goal of taking learnings from the county they visit back to their own community. I always like to say we don't sit in a conference room very often in this program. We visit local organizations that are doing this work on the ground. We meet in person with leaders and staff from the county to hear directly from them what they are working on. And in December of last year, we were fortunate enough to visit Loudoun County, Virginia. So now we will play a brief video for you about the EMLN's visit to Loudoun County.
So visiting other counties and talking to my colleagues in other counties has been one fascinating, because we don't just visit one another, sit down and talk. We actually go out and visit the places that county commissioner or supervisors feel is most important for us to see, that showed how their county rose economically and how their county moved the ball economically.
You know, economic development, economic mobility means about how we put those strategies together in a variety of sectors to really where we can grow as a community and come together not just within, but also maybe some of our neighboring communities as well. How do we grow together? And I think that's where we get convenings like this that are so important, because we get to see the strategies that are taking place across the country, and we start thinking about ways differently about how we can grow those pieces within our own communities.
Economic mobility is something we think about all the time and work on all the time. I am thrilled to be able to gather ideas and solutions from my colleagues across the country that we can try in Miami-Dade County.
I was really interested in participating to gain some information from my colleagues across the United States through NACo and really have them share with me some ideas or strategies that I can then take back to my home county and hopefully implement to improve the situation of my residents.
When I get to meet with people from other communities, large and small, I learn so much. And that is what sparks the ideas and the idea sharing that enables my county as well as other counties to implement best practices no matter where they're found.
Visiting other counties for me is really helpful in my public service. I think NACo has really provided this network of people around the country to listen to hear their experiences.
Because when people thrive, counties thrive. When the county thrives, the nation does well.
There you go. I hope you enjoyed that. The reason why we are sharing with you all about this program today is that we are opening a recruitment period next week. So if you are interested in getting involved in this program, I have my contact information up on the screen. Please reach out to me and I will ensure that you get the application details. I will also have my contact information at the end of the webinar, and if you registered for this webinar, you will also receive a follow-up email about it. Additionally, Commissioner Boyce and Supervisor Nelson are longtime members of this program, so I've asked them to share a little bit about their experience from the perspective of a county leader during their presentations. With that, I will conclude my portion of the presentation. I'm also happy to answer any questions about the program at the end. As a reminder, if you have any questions throughout today's program for any of our speakers, be sure to put them in the Q&A box. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce my colleagues, Stacey, Machinto, and Kevin Trotter.
Thank you, Katie. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to share NACo's new report on economic mobility and the role counties can play. As we go through this presentation today, feel free to drop any questions in the chat. We'll also take some questions during the Q&A portion of today's session. So let's jump right in. The County Government Levers to Foster Economic Mobility report discusses the underlying elements of economic mobility, the relationship between economic mobility and county authority, and the tools county governments and leaders can use within local power authority to advance upward mobility. Next slide, please. So next, I want to discuss some of the baseline information that helped to inform this study. In 2019, NACo surveyed the Economic Mobility Leadership Network participants to better understand their baseline knowledge of economic mobility, learn about the work that they were doing on the ground to address economic mobility within their communities, among other goals. This visualization shows the responses participants provided. The bigger and bolder the word appears, the more often it appeared in the responses, and more important it is. For this image, the words that stand out are income, ability, family, improve, health, some of the things that, as you learn through this presentation, are very entwined with economic mobility. Next slide, please. Additionally, from that same survey, we asked our members to identify areas listed here that they are targeting to improve economic mobility. This chart shows the results from that question. As you can see, the top 3 ranked answers were educational opportunities and attainment, transportation access and barriers, and affordable housing. Next slide, please. So next, I want to touch on how we can connect the dots on economic mobility through academic literature. Economic mobility is centered around the idea that each generation can do better than the next. The County Government Levers to Foster Economic Mobility report defines economic mobility as changes in people's economic outcomes or status, whether it's over a lifetime or across generations, usually measured in income. In other words, economic mobility examines people's movement up and down the economic ladder over a lifetime. There are two primary perspectives for measuring economic mobility. One is absolute mobility, which examines individuals' movement up and down the economic ladder relative to their parents' generation. The other one is relative mobility, which refers to how individuals move up and down the economic ladder compared to their peers. Those are other individuals within a generation. Some crucial points to note that inform this report are: economic mobility has emerged as a very highly local, connective, and relational issue. There's a growing body of research that is advancing the discussion on this topic, highlighting how local conditions, community characteristics, local power and autonomy impact individuals' long-term economic outcomes, and how local policies can shape these aspects. When we touch on community characteristics, think of things that support individuals and families. These can include quality housing supply, safe neighborhoods, services like early childhood education, workforce development training for job seekers, or connectivity through technology and information. All these things support the economic mobility of individuals and families. So through unique authorities and responsibilities, you, our county leaders, are well positioned to directly impact each of these and more. Next slide, please. Next, I want to talk about the nexus between economic mobility and county government. In this report, we discussed that relationship, and it's tied to county authority, which is granted through state law. Counties provide essential services, including operating and maintaining infrastructure systems, managing local health systems and emergency response, providing core human services from early childhood development to elder care. Within that authority, most counties can enact policies, pass ordinances and resolutions, enact or administer programs, and enter partnerships or interlocal agreements with other local governments and organizations. But most importantly, in the context of this report, we emphasize that these broad categories are the levers or tools county governments can wield to help millions of residents move up the economic ladder. So the power to enact change is tied to the county's authority to perform duties in the structural, functional, and fiscal domains of operations. And as I mentioned earlier, local leaders with unique authorities and responsibilities, you are well positioned to directly impact so many aspects related to the economic outcomes of individuals and families. Next slide, please. So now I want to touch on how we got to these 7 key issue areas that are displayed on this slide. In the study, we identified these areas where counties across the nation are already playing a role, or they're actively fostering upward mobility within their communities. They include housing, education and workforce development, health, community and neighborhood development, and justice and public safety. We also identified financial security and technology and information access, in which the county role is emerging. So remember that earlier slide where I referenced that survey? You will notice a lot of commonality between these issue areas, and some of the areas we asked our then cohort about what work they were doing on the ground to enact change in economic mobility. And now I will hand it over to my colleague, Kevin Trotter, who will take us through the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. Next slide, please. So education and workforce development is one of those 7 issue areas in which counties can implement mobility solutions using the 3 levers that Stacey just discussed. So the policy, our county authority, county investments, and county services. Education is an important touch point for counties to implement mobility solutions for a multitude of reasons. As you're probably aware, we have 3 levels of education in the United States, being elementary, secondary, and then post-secondary education. And counties have varying degrees of involvement within each of those 3 levels of education. And actually, education is the 3rd largest source of expenditures for counties nationwide. In 2017, counties invested over $103 billion in education, which includes construction and maintenance of public school buildings and support for higher education institutions, such as community colleges. We also know that access to a high quality education is a key determinant of child-related outcomes. People with access to quality and higher levels of education are more likely to be healthier and live longer. Individuals with post-secondary education credentials also have access to increased employment opportunities and are likely to earn higher wages and experience better health outcomes than those without post-secondary education training. Investing in early childhood education reduces the need for more expensive interventions later and produces higher returns. What this all boils down to is that education helps break the cycle of poverty and inequality, fostering mobility in current and future generations. Within the space of education, counties can implement the three levers to achieve mobility solutions. So under authority, counties sometimes have licensing of childcare provider authority, and they can also convene local partners, such as community organizations or nonprofits. In investment, counties, as I mentioned earlier, fund schools. They can also fund scholarships and resources for low-income families. And in 5 states, counties actually fully fund the K-12 education system. Counties can also provide local funding to help build the supply of education within local communities. And then finally, county services. So administering childcare programs or developmental screening programs. And these programs include early care and education, home visiting, prenatal services, parenting classes, and centralized intake and referral systems. In at least 8 states, county governments are responsible for administering the Child Care and Development Fund, or CCDF, which is a federal child care program. Next slide, please. On the workforce development side, workforce development is important because it increases human capital. And that's just a fancy way of saying the knowledge and skills that individuals need to help prepare them for better employment opportunities. Such interventions are critical for improving intergenerational mobility, particularly for workers in low-wage occupations and those displaced from the labor market due to skills mismatch or lack of access to jobs that do not require a college degree. Counties either directly provide through county-based human service agencies or partner with post-secondary education institutions and community-based organizations to provide workforce development and employment services such as vocational and on-the-job training services that boost the skills of residents. Within the space of workforce development, counties can again implement 3 levers to achieve mobility solutions. County authority. In this space, counties can form partnerships with local stakeholders, and that includes community and technical college partnerships, public-private partnerships with companies to offer specialized trainings and certifications, as well as local nonprofits and other local governments. County investments. Counties are investing in community colleges and technical certification programs. And then finally, county services. County-based human service agencies, WIOA, and workforce development boards. So vocational and on-the-job training services to boost the skills of residents are a part of the county-based human service agencies. And the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, is a federal workforce development legislation that provides support and services for adults and dislocated workers, including youth and those with significant barriers to employment. Counties can use these funds to deliver workforce services directly to local residents via WIOA's workforce development boards and American Job Centers. Next slide, please. I'd now like to introduce Commissioner Kevin Boyce from Franklin County, Ohio, to discuss the Building Futures program, a mobility solution his county implemented that focuses on workforce development for underserved communities. Commissioner Boyce.
Hello, can you all hear me? Okay. Thumbs up. Okay, good. Hello, my name is Kevin Boyce, and I am a county commissioner here in Franklin County, Ohio. First, let me thank NACo and Katie and all of the team for putting this webinar together. It's so good to be able to share what we've learned in our efforts to strengthen economic mobility for everyone in our community. At its heart, Building Futures is a jobs program. And what we know for sure is that the best social service is a good paying job. But there are lots of reasons that people end up in poverty, and there are lots of barriers that keep people from getting good jobs. But in almost all cases, simply having a better job is what can allow people to pull themselves and, most importantly, their families out of poverty. All of this matters to counties because not just because we care, but this is really about our residents, about an economic issue for how we grow our region and strengthen Central Ohio. From paying taxes to utilizing resources and social services of the county, this is really our way to strengthen Central Ohio by building families, by providing them with good paying jobs. So helping people climb the ladder of economic mobility is one of our goals embedded in our value set, but it's also a good bottom line for economics. So let me tell you a little more about Building Futures. Building Futures takes eligible people who are currently clients of our social service agencies and trains them for good middle income jobs in the building trades. And it's had a lot of really good success that I'm excited to share with you, changing whole families' lives from being perhaps at minimum wage to earning over $50,000 a year almost overnight. Building Futures is an intensive 12-week pre-apprenticeship program, and it starts at the very beginning of what a tradesperson needs to know in order to secure an apprenticeship job in the trades. The first week of the program focuses on soft skills, including financial literacy, the basic expectations of working at a professional job, like punctuality, attire, and work readiness. Then the students progress to things like safety training, construction math, and transition into a trade-specific instruction. Finally, students are able to get hands-on experience with several different construction trades and are given an intrinsic assessment to help them decide what trade might best fit their skill sets. Lastly, we help them with placement straight into an apprenticeship, and from anything from bricklaying to roofing, carpentry to electrical. There are 18 different construction trades in all that we work to place them in. The program has been a tremendous success, with 85% of the participants graduating and 88% of them finding good employment right after they graduate. And there are two things that I think make this work. First, a partnership. We work directly with our Building Trades Council and the Columbus Urban League. There are lots of jobs in this community. By the way, Central Ohio is growing at a very fast rate, one of the fastest communities growing in the Midwest and perhaps in the nation, but certainly in Ohio. And so there are a lot of construction jobs that are available. And so in order to qualify, if you don't qualify, there are two organizations that will work with you to get you there. Impact, which is our community action agency, and the Columbus Urban League. And we couldn't do this without their partnership specifically. But we also use wraparound services. We know that some low-income residents have lots of barriers that are keeping them from getting ahead. And so simply giving them a training program just may not be enough. So while our participants are in the Building Futures program, we also try to help them find things like childcare and reliable transportation. And even more important than that, they receive a stipend while they're enrolled. Most of us couldn't leave our jobs for 3 months, even if it meant we got a better job at the end. And folks who are struggling financially can't either. So it's very important that we provide them with a stipend while they're enrolled. Otherwise, most of them couldn't afford to take on this new endeavor. So we work with our clients and our residents on what they need in order to participate. And we work with them with our expert partners in the building trades to ensure that they're getting what they need to take the next step for an excellent career. Building Future has also been successful, and we've copied the model in other areas. For example, our Driving Futures program is a training program for another in-demand career, truck driving. We're working with partnership to create similar programs in nursing and home health fields, and even to train people to become county employees. But we're also debuting a similar program at the cafeteria opening in the county courthouse this spring. It'll employ folks who are previously social service clients and pay them a living wage while giving them the training and experience to go out and get jobs in the restaurant and hospitality industry. In Franklin County, we also do plenty of traditional economic development in order to grow new jobs. But the construction industry is one that we're able to see jobs available right on hand, and every day we know that it can impact lives. Finally, let me close with a couple of things that I want to share. I have had the pleasure of working with the Economic Mobility Leadership Network and visiting places from Oregon to Maryland and seeing and learning what other counties are doing to ensure that as the tide rises, all boats are lifted. And that's really the core of what addressing poverty does. Owning it, engaging in it, and providing a pathway for people to have opportunities to success is really what the conversation is about. And why recreate the wheel? If someone is doing it well in another county and we can copy that or mirror that and maybe tweak it up to fit Franklin County, then that's what we do in order to ensure that we're doing things that have a positive impact on the opportunities that people have in our community. And finally, let me just say thanks to Phyllis Randall in Loudoun County. When she was one of the hosts here, she's been a very active member of the EMLN network and tremendously has taken what she's learned around the country and implemented it in Loudoun County. But I love what she said in her comments on the video. When counties do well, the nations do well. The nation does well. And that's really the philosophy that I think NACo takes in allowing us to share our experiences with one another, what works, what doesn't work. And you know, I was finally say when I was in Multnomah County in Oregon, and got to experience some of the programs they had with their job readiness program into county job positions. And I talked to a young lady who told me that her life changed the day she started working for Multnomah County. And she said it was because she was able to buy a home and her kids were able to have stability in the schools that they were in and the place that they laid their head at night. And she said it made all the difference, but more importantly, it created a better future for the next generation in her family. And that's really what this conversation is about. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you for inspiring Franklin County in our work. And I look forward to any of your questions at the end.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyce. The next county solution that you will hear focuses on the issue area of housing. So many residents struggle with housing challenges. In 2019, cost burden residents, defined as those that spent more than 30% of their income on housing alone, comprised nearly half of renters and over 1/5 of homeowners. And we know that housing is the backbone of economic development for a lot of communities. Without safe and affordable housing, businesses are less likely to attract workers, hindering the economic well-being of the community. Additionally, children who have access to stable and affordable housing have a healthy cognitive development, and families gain access to improved educational opportunities, well-paying jobs, workforce training, and resources to improve their financial well-being. Counties play a critical role in meeting this crucial need for residents and businesses alike. County authority, housing supply through regulations, taxation, and land use and partnerships. So within this authority, counties can be involved in community planning, land use, zoning, as well as other regulations. Some counties can raise taxes and fees to invest funds into housing either directly or through a housing trust fund. And some counties can leverage zoning regulations to make housing more affordable by reducing lot size requirements, designating areas for medium density housing, and providing incentives such as density bonuses for developers. Some counties also play a role in the permitting and review process. And in this way, they can streamline or reduce fees. And then finally, counties may have the ability to partner with other local jurisdictions, as we'll hear about later, to implement housing solutions. County investments. So affordable housing and low-income housing developments. Counties invest nearly $13 billion annually in housing and community development. Counties can also provide subsidies or other investments in affordable housing developments. And then finally, county services. So housing support services is a big role that counties can play through their services. And that is support services for individuals with disabilities, low-income populations, veterans, and those experiencing homelessness. Next slide, please. I'd now like to introduce Supervisor Larry Nelson from Waukesha County, Wisconsin, to discuss the Home Consortium, A mobility solution his county implemented that focuses on expanding homeownership opportunities across a region of counties. Supervisor Nelson.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Katie, and all the NACo staff. And thank you to all the people who are listening to this program live, as well as thank those of you who are watching the recording of this. My name is Supervisor Larry Nelson in Wisconsin. We're called supervisors instead of commissioners, but it's the same thing. I believe that the future of county government is partnering with our neighboring counties. And 3 examples of that is I serve on the Bridges Library System Board, which oversees all our public libraries in Waukesha and Jefferson County. I also serve on the Community Action Coalition of South Central Wisconsin Board, whose mission is to eliminate poverty in Waukesha, Jefferson, and Dane counties. Waukesha County has a population of over 400,000 people. We're the 3rd largest county in Wisconsin. Our neighboring county to the east, Milwaukee County, is the largest, home of the world champion Milwaukee Bucks. Dane County, where our state capital, Madison, is the 2nd largest, and Waukesha County is the 3rd largest. The body that I'm going to be talking about today is our home consortium. And one of the key tenets of this program is that it's a multi-county housing consortium. Waukesha County is the lead entity. We joined together with our neighboring counties, Jefferson, Washington, and Ozaukee County, to form this consortium that has a 12-member board of directors comprising elected representatives from all 4 of the counties. 2 of my fellow supervisors serve on this board, and they work with our excellent staff member, Kristen Silva, who's our community development manager, and she works with both this home consortium and our community development block grant. The principal goals are to advance home ownership opportunities and maintain the quality of existing housing stock. We have 3 core programs that provide support to eligible families: a home ownership assistance program, a homeowner purchase or rehab program, and a home rehabilitation assistant program. These programs include down payment assistance for home buyers and low interest housing rehabilitation loans to residents that earn 80% or less of the area's median household income. Our annual federal allocation is about $1 million from Housing and Urban Development. And right now, we're going to shift to seeing some slides of some of the projects that the Home Consortium has done. So the first project that we're looking at is the Riverside Historic Lofts. These are in the city of Jefferson, Jefferson County. It's a great example of historic adaptive reuse project along the Rock River in downtown Jefferson. $500,000 in home funds were used as part of a $9.78 million project. 11 of the 36 family units are home units with a preference for people with disabilities or veterans. And you can see from this photo what a great job they did on reusing these buildings. Okay, our next slide is going to show the construction of the Spring City crossings. They were formerly called Frame Park Apartments because they're near the most beautiful park in the city of Waukesha, Frame Park. This location was the home of a historic bowling alley for Carios that sadly had a fire that burnt down the bowling alley and the apartments. This is located near our county courthouse and our administration building where our county board meets. You can see that this one had $561,000 in home funds in a $14 million project. 11 of the 12 family units are home funded and targeted toward veterans at 50% AMI or less. So this is under construction, and the next slide will see the completed project, which is really beautiful. This is on a major thoroughfare, White Rock Avenue, where we had a lot of dilapidated housing, and our community development block grant board that I serve on has funded a number of homes partnering with our Waukesha County Habitat for Humanity. So the combination of the Spring City Crossing and our partnership with Habitat for Humanity has revitalized one of the main streets coming into our city and has made a huge difference. All right, let's go on to our third slide. This is the Spring Harbor Senior Apartments located in one of our partner counties in the city of Port Washington, Ozaukee County. This is new construction, $400,000 and $40,000 of home funds in a $7.4 million project. 11 of the 40 units are home units targeted toward people at 50% AMI or less. And our final project that we're going to show you, next slide please, is the Muskego School Apartments. This is the before picture of the elementary school in the city of Muskego, Waukesha County. As a retired middle school English teacher, I'm very excited to see an old school to be refurbished and used for housing. And this one, as you can see, had $415,000 in home funds in a $10.9 million project. 7 of 22 senior apartment style units are home funded, and 1 of 18 family style townhouses are home funded. All the home units are for people at 30% AMI or less with the risk of homelessness. And now our last slide will see the final product of the Muskego School Apartments completed. I'm very excited to talk to any of you that are possibly interested in joining the Economic Mobility Leadership Network. I have been involved since the beginning, and it has been the most valuable experience of the many great experiences I've had in NACo. I'm a vice chair of the CEWD Steering Committee and the Arts and Culture Commission, but the difference in the NACo EMLN cohort is that we get to spend 3 days with our fellow elected officials and staff from all across the country. We get to tour the county that we're visiting. We get to see their best practices. And I think most importantly, we get to establish good relationships with other people from all across the country. And we really get to learn from each other, share with each other. And I can't recommend highly enough that any of you that might be interested to consider doing this. The great thing is all the travel and food are covered by the foundation that supports us. And we also have the honor of working with Katie Sullivan and the excellent NACo staff and get to know them. And that's been incredible too. I will say to Katie that she can share my email and phone numbers if anyone wants to talk to me one-on-one to hear more about why this is a fantastic opportunity for any of you to join us. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you very much for listening. And again, thank you to Katie and the NACo staff for all their support in putting together this presentation today. That's it. Katie, back to you.
Thank you so much, Supervisor. It's so helpful to hear the county perspective. I also want to say thank you to my colleagues Stacey and Kevin for sharing their recent report. We also have some information here about how to use the report in next steps. County leaders, officials, and staff can use the report to learn whether you are new to the topic of economic mobility or have a baseline knowledge. The report is a good resource to expand your knowledge. Reflect, use the knowledge you have gained from this study to help you make a decision about your approach. You can connect with your peers highlighted in this study. Think about departments or local organizations that you can partner with in support of your economic mobility goals. And finally, you can share the report with your county and peers. My colleague Kevin just shared a link to the report in the chat. I definitely would encourage you to check it out. If there is a particular policy area that you are specifically interested in exploring further in your community, you can also just kind of sort through the report by policy area and check out county case studies that way. All right, so it is now time for our Q&A portion of the webinar. Again, thank you to all of you for tuning in. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A or the chat function, and we will start going through them now. We have a question from Lori. I believe Commissioner Boyce, this is for you. Regarding the apprenticeship program, could you please share what other partners in addition to labor were engaged, such as your area community college?
Thank you for that question. So we started off the question actually we went to the churches actually, and we talked to a lot of Black pastors. We convened a dinner with Black pastoral leadership in the community because we were really also looking to diversify the building trades. And so we wanted to, there's not a day goes by I don't get calls about jobs for people or opportunities. And so we were really trying to marry the two and really get a conversation going so that the churches could be a part of providing the pipeline of people that might be able to go into the program. We did engage the community colleges to an extent, but again, we wanted to zero in on folks who perhaps didn't want to go to college, weren't going to college, and provide another option. And so while we have been in a lot of relationship with our community college, and in fact, we have what we call a case manager on staff at the community college that can refer folks from the community college into the program. We tried to really focus on it as an option as one of many options. College is always certainly one pathway, community college is another. We've got Ohio State University here, then we've got a very large community college here, but we also want to make sure that we have something for everybody. And so this was our way of really designing something specifically for folks who hadn't planned on attending college. But like I said, we have a case manager at the college that refers people that may do both or that may transfer from one to the other.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. There's also a question from Matthew about the funding model for the Building Futures program. Is there anything you can share there?
Yeah, thank you for that question as well. We, first of all, we spent about $5 million on this program and so far, and I think we've had a little over 100 folks graduate from the program, but they're in good paying jobs. And part of what we do is subsidize their income, while they're in the training program. And then even a little bit afterwards, we pay for all of the tools that they usually have to buy. I mean, that can be a barrier sometimes, getting an apprenticeship program, because you gotta pay for the tools that go with it. And they could be thousands of dollars. These are construction grade, industrial grade kinds of tools that cost a lot, and a lot of people, that's a barrier. So we do that. So we took money both from our general fund as well as funds that we received from the federal government, maybe some ARPA funds, to fund this, because this is about sustainability. If we get people on the pathway to a self-sustaining job, then those funds kind of cycle back into the system, because they're paying taxes, they're buying homes, they're purchasing things in the community. And so we see that as a very legitimate investment, even with our general funds.
Great, thank you.
And Katie, if I could just add one more point, and it
Sure.
spawned several other building future programs, like the Driving Futures program. And this, we like that because, it's training truck drivers, where Ohio, where Columbus and Central Ohio is located, is very strong proximity to a third of the nation in terms of its population. And so we built this apprenticeship program for CDL truck drivers that have been tremendously successful too. And then we talked about the nursing program and some others that we're bringing online. And so, I mean, there's a lot of ways to invest in people so that, the best social service is a good paying job.
Yeah. Thank you to Lori and Matthew for those questions. Supervisor Nelson, the Home Consortium obviously is a regional program. I'm curious, you mentioned this at the beginning of your presentation, but when you think about improving the lives and the economic mobility of residents in Waukesha County, are there other specific instances where you prioritize engaging other jurisdictions, and how important is that regional collaboration?
Well, for example, we worked with our United Way, which is of Waukesha County and Milwaukee County, a couple years ago to do a task force on homelessness in the region. And that ended up creating a new organization called the Housing Action Coalition, which is trying to address both short-term and long-term issues with people experiencing homelessness. And the Waukesha County Community Development Block Grant Board that I serve on voted to give that group almost $1 million to purchase an old City of Waukesha fire station, which just a couple weeks ago had a ribbon cutting for a new permanent winter homeless shelter. And besides it being a shelter during the winter, we're also trying to get the appropriate professionals in to meet with those people, especially those that have mental health issues or substance use issues, and try to connect them with either the HHS services or the nonprofit services that can hopefully help them break the cycle of substance use or mental health issues. And so another involvement I have is I co-chair our county's heroin task force, and our tagline is working together to break the cycle of substance use through community action and hope. And we partner with a lot of community organizations in the region And we have quarterly community partners meetings with featured speakers to try to help solve these problems. So I would say in my 10 years in city government and 10 years in county government, working collaboratively with other counties in the region and partnering with the nonprofits with our county government is a key way to help improve people's economic mobility. And I also want to say that prior to being involved with this leadership network, I had heard the term economic mobility, but I don't think I really understood it. And now the last couple of years working with the network, this is really an excellent frame. I got our CDBG board to include this in our 5-year goals, that when we're allocating money, we want to look for programs that will help people improve their economic mobility. And we've talked about with the pandemic, it's really exacerbated these problems. And that's been another positive that we've tried to address. How can we help people with hopefully coming out of this pandemic, address a lot of these issues that in many cases have become worse over the last 2 years?
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting those impacts, Supervisor. That sort of helps me transition kind of thinking about the definition of economic mobility. I wanted to ask my colleagues, Stacey and Kevin, obviously there's so many issues that that impact an individual's or a county resident's economic mobility. How did you land on just 7 to emphasize in your research? And I'll let either of you or both of you take that.
You can start, and Kevin, feel free to add. So actually, if you quickly go back to slide 9, that kind of was like how we started to think about how we wanted to shape this study. And one of the things that came up in academic literature as we're doing our literature review and search is a lot of these issue areas here are things that have some type of relationship, or researchers have found an association or correlation with economic mobility. Meaning, if we, support residents with financial security, there might be a way to improve their economic outcomes. Or we tackle issues within education and workforce development, you are enabling individuals and families to also move up their economic ladder. So coming up with, we tried to get as broad as possible because there's so many of them, but we mostly wanted to highlight things that are connected to what county governments specifically work in. And a lot of these issue areas on here, you'll find that even from other research clearinghouses, whether it's think tanks or academic literature, have found a connection between each of these issue areas and economic mobility. So we started off with a survey with that first cohort of the network participants, and then dug a little deeper into academic literature to find how all these things are tied together before settling on these specific issue areas. And Kevin, feel free to add anything.
I think you covered it. I would just add that, we also set on these issue areas because they're clearly defined areas in which counties can affect mobility. So as Stacey was saying, not only the academic research and also, the county top priorities, but also counties are already doing work in these spaces, and they're already fostering economic mobility, whether or not they knew it at the time. So that was another factor that played a role in the decision on those 7 key issue areas.
Thank you, Kevin and Stacey. I'm going to toot my colleagues' horns for a moment and just say this report is really just a fantastic body of work. And the first thing that I've ever heard of that identifies specifically how county governments are able to support residents with economic mobility. So I we're very grateful to them for creating that body of work. We have about 3 minutes left. I'll just say, Commissioner Boyce or Supervisor Nelson, any final words about the Economic Mobility Leadership Network program as we close out and encourage folks to check it out if they're interested?
The only thing I'll add, unless Larry, you want to go first?
Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay. The only thing I would add is that there was a time when we had visited several communities to learn more about what was working, what wasn't working, and kind of think as a group about this work. And we kind of went through this with Gates Foundation was involved, went through it for a year, and we're going to end. And what I realized is this isn't a year's kind of work. This is something that requires us to go as long as we can and continue to review, continue to discuss and exchange information, and really create forums like this so that as ideas are being conjured up and tested, that we're able to take those things and replicate those in different communities or not, and change them up. And so I just want to thank NACo for your leadership and work. I was just telling my staff person to print the report out. I want to take a deeper dive into it. It's that kind of information that really equips us with the tools necessary to think through how we can solve and address some of our own challenges. COVID-19 has created a whole set of challenges on top of challenges of economic mobility that just existed long before the pandemic. And we don't even know what the impacts are fully, and we may not know for another couple of years. And so now is the time to begin to exchange ideas and thoughts and programs and prepare for what that, because counties we know are the safety net for all, that catch basin for all of those in need. And so thank you for your work. Thank you for your leadership, and I'm looking forward to continuing this work. This should be a standing committee, by the way, for NACo. So I want to propose that at some point. We should make it a standing committee and really get this thing going on a national level.
I agree with everything that Kevin just said, and I just want to really encourage people to talk to Katie or myself and really look into whether this is something you could do. It's really worth your time, and I think it would help everyone involved be a better elected official, and there's a lot of benefits both personally and for your county if you decide to join us. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you so much. With that, we will conclude our webinar for today. I want to say thank you so much, Commissioner Kevin Boyce, Supervisor Larry Nelson. We really appreciate you lending your time, expertise, and guidance about the program with everyone today. I also want to thank my colleagues, Stacey Machinto and Kevin Trotter, for their excellent research and time sharing that with us today. If you have any follow-up questions for me, if you're interested in the Economic Mobility Leadership Network, or if you have any questions or feedback about today's program, please reach out to me. My email is ksullivan@naco.org. It's on the screen right now. I would love to hear from you. And that's it. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.